Hey, what's going on, guys and girls? Indie Pride here with Milk and Cookies Total War, bringing you another first-person replay commentary for Total War Rome 2. And I know it's been a while since I've done my last one, but I decided to hop on Rome 2 the last couple of days. I've taken a little bit of a break from the game, but I've come back to it, gotten some games in with a high-def Oakley. This was not from that series, but I'm going to try to get, for those of you who have heard of him, try to get him on to dual commentate with me a couple times sometime in the near future. But a couple housekeeping things I want to talk about before I get into this particular replay. One, I will not be purchasing Beasts of War DLC, and the reason for that is because I do not think that it's worth $3. And I'm not going to bash on CA. It's really not that big a deal, but I do not think that the content they put out in that unit pack was worth any amount of money whatsoever, especially considering that some of the units like Camel Cataphracts were in the original game before launch. And I know they said stuff like the art direction and stuff for the units weren't finished yet, but I don't think that it's worth the money, and so I'm just not going to buy it. Like, if they release a real expansion pack like on Fall of Samurai territory that's like has a lot of new features and a lot of new units and stuff, I will absolutely buy that because I want to support the game and I want to get a new expansion pack for the game that actually provides new content. But I'm not interested in the unit pack. I thought the Camel Cataphracts were probably the only interesting unit in that entire unit pack, so I won't be buying it. Number two, I am using Shadowplay now, and that is software that comes with NVIDIA video cards, part of the GeForce Experience software package, and this is the first time I've ever used it, so we're going to see how it works. I haven't noticed any performance drops, so that's a good thing, and we'll see as we get further into this replay how that works. So for any of you guys who have used Shadowplay in recording before, let me know how you like it. I know that High Def Oakley uses it, and he told me he likes it, but I'd like to get some other people's opinions as well. So let's get into this replay now. It's going to be a 2v2 Massagetae and Athens versus Rome and Parthia. Looking at army setups, it's pretty interesting. We're playing some players that were pretty new. I'm just going to say at the start of this replay that they were not the best players, and it was because I think this guy was like it was his second or third match ever. So he has kind of not a very good army setup, but I don't think they actually played that poorly. In fact, for newer players, I thought they actually played pretty well, but I will say that this was not the most difficult replay or most difficult battle I've ever had. But I did want to try out the Massagetae because I haven't actually used a cavalry-only faction for a very long time now, and I wanted to see how the Massagetae and maybe Roxolani and the Royal Scythians stack up in multiplayer after all these patches. And so we're on patch 9 now, of course, and I just wanted to see what they were capable of doing. Some of the price changes I thought beforehand would actually be really detrimental to what the Massagetae were able to do, but I've actually noticed some pretty interesting things about the price changes CA made, and I think they were actually pretty good decisions. So Saka Cataphracts are actually better than Parthian Royal Cataphracts. For those of you who saw the DLC preview we did for the Nomadic Tribes pack a while back, we talked about the Saka Cataphracts and how they matched up against Parthia, and one-on-one they beat Parthian Royal Cataphracts. But they actually cost less. I believe that Parthian Royal Cataphracts cost like 1,400 now, and Saka Cataphracts cost 1,280. So it might not sound like much, but that 120 or so talent difference in price can really add up when you bring like 4 or 5 Cataphract units. So really the Saka Cataphracts are a pretty good cost investment, honestly. How much you're actually investing in them is probably worth what you're paying for them, and they are one of the premier, if not the premier, cav unit in the game. Now, I haven't tested them against other Nomadic Tribes cavalry units. So, for example, the Saka Noble Armored Lancers are actually more expensive than the Saka Cataphracts now, and I'm not sure if that's because they're able to beat Saka Cataphracts in melee, but that's some testing that I could do later on. I just know that the price changes for the Massagetae were actually not completely detrimental. Like, you're actually able to field a large cavalry force, and it's nice. I mean, it allows you to bring more than I expected. If say the Massagetae had the same price changes as like Parthia did, that would have made it a lot more difficult for them to be effective. And even now, I'm still not convinced that they're able to be effective in like a competitive multiplayer setting, but certainly when I'm playing against just randoms online. They do seem to be pretty effective. So I'm just testing my opponent here, trying to get some skirmish units off the field. He did a good job getting his mercenary hoplites up in front. One thing I have noticed in this patch is that you cannot charge cataphracts directly into infantry anymore. It's not going to work out well for you. At least not sword units that are bracing, that are backed up by a lot of other sword units. So like, I've tried using like an all-cav army to go into Roman legions and attack them from the front, and when they're bracing, they actually resist pretty well, and you lose a lot of guys. And if they can tie you down and then bring in some other sword units, you're going to get cut down regardless of whether there are spears there to back them up or not. So I've noticed that, and in previous patches that wasn't the case. Like if you sent cataphracts directly into armor legionnaires, you would destroy them in seconds. And that's one reason why I've said that Rome matches up really poorly against the heavy cavalry factions like Parthia and some of the nomadic tribes before in earlier patches, was because they would just lose all their legions right off the bat, and that doesn't happen anymore. So that was kind of interesting. But he wasn't bracing here, and that was a mistake of his, so he's going to lose 70 men off the charge from that stock of cataphracts, basically off the bat. And that means that I'm going to be able to take that Parthian swordsman off the field, and we're still baiting and just trying to get my opponent as spread out as possible. This was a bit of a micro mistake here, charged right into the hoplite unit, but they are extremely heavily armored and one of the best cav units in the game. Saka Noble Armor Lancers, like I said, they do cost more than the Saka Cataphracts, so I don't know if they're actually better than Saka Cataphracts. I brought a couple, but they're a very strong unit. And so they managed to take that hoplite charge from the front and not actually take very many losses. So I just pulled them out, and I'm going to go after these elite Persian archers, try to take them off the field as well. And I'm just like hitting my opponent from as many angles as possible. I've really enjoyed playing the all-cav factions the last couple of days. It's really what I've pretty much done exclusively, and I've been having a lot more fun with that. I don't know what it is. I think it's just the mobility that bringing only cav gives you. It kind of allows you to hit whatever part of the line you want whenever you want, and I think that's a lot more fun than just, say, bringing an Iceni or Roman Rush and just running my opponent off the field right off the bat. You kind of have to play a little bit more careful with the cataphracts or the horse factions, because you can't just hit whatever unit you want whenever you want. You kind of have to be careful with spears and such. So Saka Cataphracts into melee with the Parthian swordsman, going to be able to cut these guys up. Again, one of the best cav units in the game, and they have very high armor piercing as well. Let's check that real quick. Armor piercing for the Cataphracts is 16, and I think that's because they have the axes as their secondary weapon. So that's a lot of armor piercing, honestly. And he's going to chase me off with the Royal Cataphracts, and I'm just hitting as many parts of the line as possible. So I noticed here that Rome was committing to the melee engagement, and my ally, I forgot to mention, is Desert Fox, playing on Athens, and he just wants to skirmish his opponent at the moment, which makes sense. He has a hoplite army, so he doesn't really want to engage Rome yet. But like I said, Rome does have a very weird army setup. It's pre-Marian reforms, actually. It's got a bunch of Principes and Hastati, so really not a great army setup for multiplayer, but I appreciated his the pre-Marian reform army that he built anyway, even if it's not particularly good. Back here, he's going to commit his cavalry units against my Saka Noble Armored Lancers. That should not be a difficult fight for me at all, especially considering the fact that I am flanking with these Saka Cataphracts and will be able to get a really devastating rear charge off on the Legionary Cav. So that Roman Cav completely surrounded with the armor piercing and the trample charges going off. Not really a good chance of him winning that melee engagement. And as soon as I take his cav off the field, I'll pretty much have free reign to do whatever the hell I want with my cavalry. Let's look what else is happening here. So Rome has committed his melee forces, and these hoplites are going to last for a very long time and be a very nice anvil for the hammer of my Saka Cataphracts. And so while he's tied down, after I kill his cav, which I have managed to do, I will hit him from the rear in a couple seconds here, and that should be pretty devastating for Rome. Gonna have to pull my Cataphracts out of this fight. Again, even though they are extremely heavily armored, don't want to keep them in melee with hoplites or any spear units for that matter. So I'm going to pull them out. and then commit my Steppe Noble Lancers into the rear of these Principes. And they do have lower morale, I believe, than the normal. Yeah, like the elite troops for Rome usually have like 65 to 75 morale, I believe. These guys only have 55, so Hammer and Anvil from Massagetae going to cause a chain rout here, and he's not going to be having a good day. Battle's really spread out now, but at this point we've pretty much already wrapped this up. I have had my horse archers shooting in at the spear units for a while now. The really good targets for those guys are the low armored ones, of course. Heavy shot does give them some armor piercing, but if you can target low armor spears like Gladiator Spearmen, those are probably your best bet, because these guys could actually put a hurting on some of my cav units, and they're just fodder for arrows, basically. So if I can target those guys down, that makes it a lot easier for my cavalry, and that's exactly what I did. So Parthia is going to make his last stand here. He does have only spear units basically left, so I don't really have to be that careful about this melee engagement considering how far ahead we are, and I could basically just run in directly onto his spears and we'd still be able to win, but I like to be a little bit more cautious with my melee engagements, so I'm not going to do that, of course. Going to try to hit these hoplites from as many flanks as possible while I'm shooting them with the heavy shot from my archers. Bit of a miss micro here. I didn't actually get a charge off on this Royal Cataphract, which was a mistake, but they're at a third strength, so wiping them out should not be too difficult. And he's going to commit his hoplites, and I'm going to commit the rest of my cavalry. So yeah, managed to take out those archers there. They weren't able to do very much in this battle really at all. None of their ranged units were. And I think that's a symptom of the fact that I brought so much cavalry. You gotta be really, really careful with how you micro your ranged units when there's this much cav on the field. And a hammer and anvil on the mercenary hoplites will cause a chain rout. And then the only units left are these eastern cataphracts, which I believe my opponent mis-microed. And I assume what he did was put a movement order on them to give them a running order, and they just didn't run. They walked instead, and so they didn't actually make it into the fight in time. And because of how the morale system works, once I believe it gets to like 90 or 95% in your favor, it's basically an automatic rout, and that's what's going to happen here. Eastern Cataphracts off the field, and we win the day. So, like I said, I have not been enjoying the infantry factions as much, or the skirmish factions for that matter. I've really just liked the mobility that the Massagetae and some of the other nomadic tribes give you. So I've been playing them a lot and enjoying that. I gotta be honest, I have not been enjoying Rome 2 as much recently. And I think partially that's because it's gotten a little stale. I'd like a real DLC to come out soon, one that actually changes multiplayer up dramatically. I'm not going to hold my breath for that. I've heard rumblings from CA about changing Carthage's unit roster a little bit. That was in an interview with Joystick about the Beasts of War DLC and some of the backlash of that. They talked about releasing some more free content for Carthage. And then, of course, I believe they're going to have a true expansion at some point. That's hopefully more than what Caesar and Gaul was. I know a lot of you guys actually like Caesar and Gaul a lot. I didn't buy it because, again, I didn't think it was worth the money. But I think a true expansion on the scope of something like Fall of Samurai I would definitely be interested in. Like a Barbarian Invasion or Alexander expansion, hands down, I would buy that for 20, 25 bucks. I would probably do that if they offered enough content to justify the cost. So yeah. Anyway, that was Massagetae. Really fun faction. Give them a try if you haven't played them in a while. I don't think they're certainly worse than a lot of other factions, but the all-cav is a nice little twist on things, and I don't actually think I've ever posted a Massagetae replay on this channel from my perspective, so that might be the first one. Hope you guys enjoyed it. We can look at stats real quick. I got a lot of kills and not very many deaths. Again, if you manage to beat your opponent with an all-cav faction, it's probably going to be like that because you cause chain routes with the devastating charge of those cataphracts. And yeah, our opponents, Yeah, I realize this was a really one-sided battle. I just don't have too many replays. I do have some, like I said, with high def Oakley, so I'll try to Oakley high def. Excuse me. I'll try to get him on to dual com with me soon, and those were much closer battles than this one. But this was one of the only replays I actually had of just myself playing. So anyway, hope you guys enjoyed. Try to bring you some more content relatively soon. For those of you who are wondering about the Lusitani Gage-Eli head-to-head campaign, we have not forgotten about you. 50 Bomb has been playing a lot of Europa Universalis 4 and hasn't been on Rome 2 at all, basically, and he actually hasn't been on that much anyway. We've both been pretty busy. So matching up the New Zealand time zone and East Coast US time zone, pretty difficult to do. So we'll try to get back on that as soon as possible, and I think it will get very interesting soon because the war between him and myself is basically about to start when we start recording again. So anyway, talk to you guys later, and peace out. By the way, after watching that replay, let me know what you think about Shadowplay and the frame rates and everything. I just watched it back. I think it looks really, really good. And the reason for that is that I believe it runs off of your graphics card itself, not through like third-party software. So frame rates are a lot better, and that's what I could tell, but let me know what you guys think, because I think it looks really good, but I'm interested to know what you guys see. Okay, see ya.